I never imagined that the worst betrayal of my life would happen, just 3 days after we buried our father. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 46 years old, and I live in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio. My father, Richard Carter, wasn't a wealthy businessman or a celebrity. He spent 38 years repairing trains for the railroad. Every dollar he earned came from hard work, long hours, and sacrifice. After my mother passed away 15 years earlier, I became the one who looked after him. Every Saturday, I drove 45 minutes to mow his lawn. Every Tuesday evening, I brought groceries. Whenever he had doctor's appointments, I was the one sitting beside him. My younger sister, Jessica, always had an excuse. I'm too busy. The kids have soccer. I'll come next weekend. Next weekend almost never came. Dad never complained. He simply smiled whenever I asked if he wished Jessica visited more. People show love in different ways, he would say. I wanted to believe him. When he was diagnosed with heart failure, things became harder. He could barely climb the stairs without stopping to catch his breath. I rearranged my work schedule. I missed vacations. I used most of my paid leave taking him to specialists. Not once did I ask for anything in return. Because he was my father. The night before he died, I stayed beside his hospital bed. Jessica came for 15 minutes. She kissed his forehead, looked at her phone twice, then whispered, "Call me if anything changes." She left before Dad opened his eyes again. He passed away just after sunrise. I held his hand until it became cold. Even now, I still remember the silence in that room. It wasn't just grief. It felt like an entire chapter of my life had closed forever. The funeral was beautiful. Friends from the railroad came wearing old uniforms. Neighbors shared stories I'd never heard. Everyone kept telling me how lucky Dad had been to have a daughter like me. Jessica smiled politely through every compliment, but something about her smile bothered me. It didn't look sad. It looked impatient. 3 days later, our father's attorney invited us to his office for the reading of the will. Jessica walked in wearing expensive designer clothes and carrying a leather handbag that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. She hugged me quickly. "I'm sure Dad took care of both of us," she said with a confident grin. Something about her tone felt rehearsed. The attorney opened the folder. He adjusted his glasses. Then he began reading. Our father left the family home to Jessica. His investment account to Jessica. His truck to Jessica. His antique watch collection to Jessica. His savings also to Jessica. I sat frozen. The room became strangely quiet. Jessica tried to hide her smile, but she couldn't. She crossed one leg over the other and looked at me with fake sympathy. "Oh, Emily," she whispered. "I'm sure Dad knew what he was doing." I couldn't speak. It wasn't about the money. It was about everything I thought our relationship had meant. Had I imagined all those years? Had the hospital visits meant nothing? Had every sacrifice been invisible? The attorney cleared his throat. "There is one personal item left to discuss." Jessica laughed softly. "Oh, let Emily have the photo albums." I felt my face burn. The attorney reached into another envelope. This item was specifically addressed to Emily Carter. He handed me a small, worn wooden box. Jessica rolled her eyes. "Seriously? Dad left you an old box?" She almost sounded disappointed, as if she had expected to take that too. I held the box carefully. It was smooth around the edges from years of use. My father had kept important things inside it when I was little. Old coins, letters from my mother, family photographs. The attorney looked directly at me. "Your father instructed me that this box must not be opened inside my office." Jessica laughed. How dramatic. She stood up and grabbed her car keys. "Well, I guess that's settled." Before leaving, she stopped beside my chair. "I'll probably sell the house next month," she said casually. "You understand, right? It's business." Business. The home where our parents raised us. The kitchen where Mom baked birthday cakes. The porch where Dad taught me how to ride a bicycle. To Jessica. It was just another property. She walked out smiling. I stayed behind, staring at the wooden box resting in my hands. The attorney quietly leaned toward me. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Emily, your father made me promise to tell you one sentence after Jessica left." My heart started racing. "What sentence?" He looked toward the closed office door to make sure my sister was gone. Then he smiled. "Your father said, 'Don't let her celebrate too early. She never reads the entire will.'" At that moment, I realized the story wasn't over. It hadn't even truly begun. I carefully unlocked the wooden box, and what I found inside changed everything. I stared at the small brass key taped beneath the lid of the wooden box. It wasn't the key that caught my attention. It was the folded letter underneath it. The envelope had my name written in my father's familiar handwriting. For Emily. Read this only after the will has been presented. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Emily, if you're reading this, then everything happened exactly as I expected. I froze. Dad knew. He had known something like this would happen. I know Jessica. She has always wanted the prize before understanding the price. She rushes to collect rewards but rarely reads the details. That's why I asked my attorney to follow my instructions exactly. I swallowed hard. The attorney quietly smiled. He spent months preparing this. I kept reading. The key in this box opens my safety deposit box at First National Bank. Inside, you'll find another envelope marked Final. Instructions. Don't tell Jessica until you've read everything. I looked at the attorney. Did you know what was inside? He shook his head. No, your father sealed it himself. For the first time since the funeral, I felt something other than grief. Hope. The next morning, I drove straight to the bank. The manager checked my identification, unlocked the vault, and led me to a private room. When the metal box slid onto the table, my heart pounded so loudly I could hear it. Inside were several folders. Old photographs, property records, a flash drive, and another sealed envelope. I opened it carefully. Dad's handwriting appeared again. Emily, if Jessica received the house during the first reading of the will, don't panic. The house was never the real inheritance. I read the sentence twice, then 3 times. What did he mean? Beneath the letter was another document. It was the complete copy of the will, not the summary that had been read in the attorney's office. The final pages included something called Schedule B. I had never seen it before. My eyes moved slowly across the page. Everything suddenly began to make sense. Dad had left Jessica ownership of the house, but ownership came with conditions. Every unpaid tax, every outstanding repair, every maintenance obligation, every loan attached to the property would become her sole responsibility. Dad had written it clearly. The beneficiary accepting the residence accepts all existing financial obligations connected to the property. I quickly searched through the folders. There they were. Invoices, roof estimates, foundation reports, a heating system ready to fail. The total repair costs were almost $200,000. I leaned back in my chair. Jessica thought she had inherited a fortune. Instead, she had inherited a financial disaster. But that still wasn't the biggest surprise. Another folder carried a label, Private Investment Portfolio. Inside were account statements stretching back almost 20 years. My father hadn't been rich because of his paycheck. He had quietly invested. Patiently, carefully. The account balance made my jaw drop. Over $3 million. I honestly thought I was reading it wrong. I counted the zeros again. No, it was real. Attached was another signed instruction. This investment portfolio shall transfer only to Emily Carter after she fulfills the conditions listed below. Conditions. I kept reading. Because Emily spent years caring for me without expecting payment. These assets belong solely to her. They are intentionally excluded from the public reading of the will and transferred through the trust, established years earlier. Tears blurred my vision. Dad hadn't forgotten me. Not even close. He had simply protected what mattered most. The final sentence nearly broke me. Love isn't measured by what someone receives after death. It's measured by who stayed while I was still alive. I cried for several minutes. Not because of the money. Because my father had seen everything. Every hospital visit. Every grocery trip. Every sacrifice I believed had gone unnoticed. He had noticed all of it. 3 days later, Jessica called. Her cheerful voice was gone. Emily, did you know about the roof? No. The inspector says it's collapsing. I stayed quiet. And apparently there's foundation damage too. I'm sorry to hear that. She sighed loudly. I'll probably sell the place. I almost answered. Then I remembered Dad's letter. Let her discover everything herself. I hope it works out, I simply said. She sounded irritated. Weren't you listening? Nobody wants to buy it unless I fix everything first. I wished her luck and ended the call. Over the next 2 weeks, Jessica called again. And again. Each conversation sounded more desperate. The taxes are overdue. The furnace stopped working. The plumbing failed. The insurance company refuses to renew. Every new problem uncovered another one. Finally, she exploded. Dad tricked me. No, I replied calmly. He trusted you to read what you signed. Silence. She had accepted every condition without asking a single question. She had been too busy celebrating. Then came the call I never expected. Emily? Her voice cracked. I need help. I closed my eyes. Years earlier, I would have said yes before she finished speaking. But this time was different. This time, I remembered every lonely hospital visit, every birthday she skipped, every excuse, and every moment Dad waited by the window hoping she'd show up. I can't fix this for you, I said quietly. You wanted the inheritance. You accepted it. She started crying. For the first time in our lives, she finally understood that some mistakes couldn't be blamed on anyone else. But she still had no idea that the biggest part of Dad's plan hadn't even been revealed yet. Jessica called me one last time. Emily, please, I didn't know. I thought Dad loved me more. I took a slow breath. He did love you, Jessica. But love isn't the same as rewarding someone's choices. A week later, we met at the attorney's office. He placed the final documents on the table and explained everything. The house Jessica had rushed to claim came with every debt, repair, tax bill, and legal obligation attached to it. She had signed the acceptance without reading the full will. Then he turned to me. The Carter Family Trust now transfers to Emily Carter, exactly as Richard Carter instructed. Jessica's face turned pale. The investments, savings, and assets Dad had quietly built over decades had been protected inside the trust. They had never been part of the public reading of the will. She lowered her head. I was so busy trying to win. I never stopped to understand what Dad was trying to teach me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel angry. I simply felt at peace. Dad hadn't created a trap out of revenge. He had created a lesson about patience, responsibility, and love. Jessica eventually sold the house after paying off what she could. It wasn't easy, but she accepted the consequences of her own decisions. As for me, I used part of the trust to create a scholarship in Dad's name for students, learning skilled trades, the kind of honest work he had been proud of all his life. When I visit his grave now, I don't think about the money. I think about his final lesson. Never chase the first page of an inheritance. Read the whole story first.